Hi there, I'm Len Pagano, and welcome to a very special interview with Chief Michael Register, who is the police chief for Clayton County, Georgia, which is a suburban area on the south side of Atlanta. Chief, it's good to be with you again.
Good to be with you, Len.
You know, a lot of people today know there are a lot of problems that police chiefs like yourself face, and I think one of the things we as a nonprofit foundation have been hearing more and more have been some issues that we never would have expected to be all over the country. And one issue is human trafficking, and the second issue are youth gangs. And I'm just curious, from your point of view, you're in a very large, urban area. How have these issues impacted your law enforcement organization?
Well, it not only impacts law enforcement, but it impacts the community at large. I think that human trafficking and gangs are separate issues, but they're not separate issues because sometimes we see that there's an overlap. Everyone, sometime in their life, they lose their way. And we find that a lot of the young people that get involved in or have become involved in human trafficking are runaways. They made bad decisions on who they decided to befriend or hang out with, and they find themselves in a situation that they can't get themselves out of. And we're not just talking about young girls, we're also talking about young boys, because we've seen them both. We did a human trafficking initiative involving prostitution a couple of times last year. And it really amazed me at the young men and women who we came in contact with that were in situations that they wanted to get out of, but for whatever reason they felt helpless, or there was a fear involved that they could not extract themselves from it. They had lost contact at times with family members, and they truly were hostages. One comes to mind, a very tragic story. A 15-year-old female that was into prostitution, continued to make contact with the police, and unfortunately got herself in a situation one night where she was in a motel room with an individual, and she actually had brought the individual in as part of what she was supposed to be doing, and that individual was going to be robbed by two other individuals that were hiding in the room. Unfortunately, the victim that she had brought into the room was armed also. And there was gunfire, and tragically this young lady that had been involved in prostitution from the age of 15. Now she had just turned 17, was the only one that was hit. She clung to life for 3 days before she expired. And your heart just goes out to her, because surely this is not the life she wants. This is not how she wanted to end up. So anything that we as law enforcement can do, getting involved in some of the federal initiatives and state initiatives and local initiatives and initiatives by Safe America, where we make contact with these individuals, we have resources that can help them get out of this life. And also we can help them not be afraid to walk away from that life. And you find that it is just a vicious cycle that goes around and around sometimes, unless there is some type of intervention that breaks that cycle. And so I applaud you for what Safe America is attempting to do. We have, at my department, we have officers that are on various federal task forces. The FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force. We have an officer on the Department of Homeland Security's Human Task Force. And so when we do initiatives, we certainly use all of our resources to include the federal task force officers to come in. And, you know, we did several initiatives last year where we were targeting various areas, and every time that we went out and we targeted these areas in these special initiatives, every time we found at least 3 or 4 young people that were considered to be victims of human trafficking.
Well, you know, it's amazing, isn't it, Mike, how many people are out there that are, you know, getting into this horrific area. And we've heard so many stories. Safe America, as you say, has gotten involved in this and working in educating people, parents. And it's amazing to me how many people really don't realize how widespread this problem is. I know some of it stems from foster children who don't really get the kind of parenting that they need for their lives. And to hear, you know, that 70% of human trafficking victims are usually foster children is quite a compelling statement to worry about what are we not doing for foster children. Again, back to another issue, are gangs, and you see this all the time, I'm sure, don't you?
Oh, we do, and you know, gangs are prevalent all across the country. A lot of communities they don't want to admit they have a gang problem. But even if you don't admit you have a gang problem, certainly you have to admit that you have gang presence. And with gang presence comes potential problems. In the area that I work, we find that gangs are very transient now. We find that gangs are, through social media, the ability to move. We find that, we'll take the metro Atlanta area. There's no walls between the municipalities or counties anymore for gangs. It's one huge area, and we find that the gangs are becoming more interconnected. Certainly we find that the gangs are not just on the corner doing street drugs anymore. Certainly that may be part of it, but they're involved in human trafficking, they're involved of course in prostitution, white collar crimes, like identity theft, drugs, illicit weapon sales. So they're involved in a lot of things. And when you address the gang issue, you are addressing a lot of crime issues that you find are occurring in your community. And we certainly look at it 3 ways. The first way if you want to call it the first phase of what we attempt to do, I talked earlier about the partnership in another segment with the community. Partnering with the community to include businesses to find ways to keep kids from joining gangs. That's one. But we've got to give them alternatives. It's easy for me to say, you don't need to be in a gang, but what is the alternative? And of course, it's not just what is the alternative for free time, but there's some sociological issues that certainly the community and America has to deal with when they're addressing the gang issue holistically. So number one, let's try to keep kids out of the gangs. Number two, if we have children or kids in a gang, what can we do to get them out of the gang, to extract them from the gangs? And three, unfortunately, if we have individuals out there, no matter what their age, in a gang, and they continually decide to victimize the community, then certainly there's got to be an enforcement arm to addressing the gang issue. But we are working again with organizations like Safe America and institutions of faith and other organizations to try to find solutions to the gang issue. And to find solutions to the gang issue, we've got to find solutions to some of the root sociological problems that are foundational recruiters, as we may say, for the gangs.
What draws a young person, I think I've heard the answer, but what would you say is a factor drawing a young person to want to be in a gang?
Well, it could be many things. It could be a friend got them involved in a gang, a family member. It could be free time. If some kids, if they have nothing to do, they're going to find something to do. It could be a personal need of acceptance. I don't have a family, so now the gang is my family. It could be the lure of status. It's a lot of things, and it's going to depend on the child. And when I say child, we see children 6, 7, 8, 9 that are attempting to get into gangs or doing things for gangs. And then when we look at some of the gangs that in my jurisdiction that we're dealing with, we're not just talking about teenagers. We're talking about individuals that are certainly in their teens, but in their 20s. And we see gang members that are in leadership roles primarily that are in their 30s.
Well, it's alarming. It sounds like you're dealing with quite an age span. Most people would think that they start as early as 6 or 9 years old, or start to want to be in a gang that early. But with that said, I guess that's where your program CARE really would make a big difference to help people see a different approach to life before they get to that age.
Well, that is the hope of the program, is to help them stay on a positive path in life and to help them make good decisions. And being in a gang is not a good decision. It may seem like a good idea at the time, but I'll tell you, Lynn, and I've heard this said, that all bad ideas have one thing in common: they all began as a good idea.
Well, that's an interesting statement. I think I'm going to put that on my bulletin board at the office. Well, we've heard a lot here today from Chief Register, and I know that we're going to be working together to solve these problems. Those of you watching, we wanted you to hear this from Chief Register so you can consider a way to help Safe America dealing with these kind of issues of fighting the tendency for young people to look at gangs as something cool, something they should get into, and certainly the human trafficking situation, which is horrific. I want to say what's impressive to me, we had a meeting, as you know, recently at a local television station, and it was amazing to see how many people came and how many people wanted to help. And since that meeting, the Episcopal Diocese of Atlanta has actually volunteered to help us put on a week-long program for young people who may be victims of either human trafficking or may be tempted to enter into gangs. So I think this is a good example of how the faith-based community, churches, synagogues, can help make a difference and really tackle some real serious problems.
And I also think, Lynn, that your tenacity and want to get the message out, I think, is very important, because I truly believe that people care. But I also believe that people won't care if they don't know that there's something to care about. And so you getting this message out and you utilizing Safe America to address, I think, are two critical issues across the nation, not just in the community I work in, but across the nation: human trafficking and gangs. I think is just is great. I'm very proud to be part of it. And as we said in the CARE segment, you know, we're doing this for the young people, because if we improve the young people and help the young people, then we help America's future.
Well, you're so accurate in that, and we look forward to working together with you, Chief. And thank you for those of you watching. If you want to help, please, again, notice the email that you can send to me, any information, so we can reach out to you. And Chief Register and I will look forward to working with you on these kind of topics to help improve America. Thanks for being with us, and have a nice day.